Welcome all to today's Taking Your Firm from Good to Great webinar. I'm Natalie Hannapel, the Director of Training here at Filevine. In today's webinar, we're focusing on conversation and hearing our esteemed panel how they've addressed challenges and obstacles of scaling a business, utilizing the right technology, and how they've built effective and efficient teams. We will close out today's webinar with a Q&A session. As this conversation is underway, please use the Zoom Q&A feature to record your questions. On our panel today, we have, get my over there, so you can see some pictures to go with the heads on the screen. We have Tyson Mutrux, Managing Partner of Mutrux Firm Injury Lawyers, Rayanne Daly, Director of Law Firm Success from Apex Chat, and Tom Kays, owner of the civil rights group Trial Lawyers. If I could have Tyson, you share a little bit about yourself and we'll go through our panel.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you, Natalie. Thanks for having us or letting us do this. This is great. I think Filevine putting these on is fantastic. My name is Tyson Mutrux. I am the owner of Mutrux Firm Injury Lawyers. We have offices in St. Louis and in Columbia, Missouri. We also practice in other states as well. I am also co-host of the Maximum Lawyer podcast with Jim Hacking.
Great. Thank you, Tyson. Rayanne, will you share a bit?
Sure. My name's Rayanne Daly. Also very excited to be here. I'm the Director of Law Firm Success at Apex Chat. We're a live online chat service. My job is to understand pain points and work with clients together to solve solutions to their issues. In addition to working with Apex Chat, I have 17 years management experience in large law firms, working with different case management systems, intake systems, vendors, consultant, very focused on data management, process and operations involvement, and building stronger teams. Everything really I do is kind of focused around successful employees, clients make successful law firms. Super excited to be here.
Oh, thank you, Rayanne. And Tom, will you share a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for hosting. Thanks for inviting me. My name's Tom Kays, and as of January 1st, we renamed our firm the Civil Rights Group after about a year and a half, 2 years as the law office of Thomas R. Case. So if anybody looks me up and gets confused because they can't find our website, it should be actually launched, the new name launched today, hopefully, if all the tech stuff happens. So we represent civil rights plaintiffs in 3 kinds of cases: excessive force cases against the police, prisoners' rights cases, usually involving the failure to protect, and we represent women who've been sexually harassed and assaulted by landlords, property managers. So we're kind of a small kind of 3 niche civil rights firm here in Chicago.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing. Appreciate the timings. Pretty spot on then with the new name.
We hope to have the website up before today, but it was not to be. So.
Well, again, thank you all for joining today and for giving us this time and great conversation we're about to kick off. What I want to start with is digging into the challenges and obstacles you experience scaling a business. So our first question, what is the biggest challenge you faced in growing your business and how did you overcome it?
I'll start if you want, or Rayanne if you want to. It doesn't
go
matter.
ahead. I'll go. Okay. You have at it. You got there first.
Great. So it's interesting. I really think that I thought about this a lot because there's a lot of problems that you have. There's a lot of obstacles that you face whenever you're growing a firm. And I was like thinking, okay, what's the main one? And it really comes down to people and getting the right people on your team and in your firm. If you get the right people, a lot of things become easier, way easier if you just get the right people. And so it's really getting the hiring process down, having an actual hiring process, not just, throwing up a job ad and doing 1 or 2 interviews and hiring the person, but actually having a hiring process, but having that really good hiring process to filter out the bad eggs and getting the right people on your team and filtering through and getting those people and actually defining part of it is defining the person that you want. Like, what is your ideal job candidate? What's your ideal employee? Who do you want on the bus? Who are the right people to get on the bus? And once you have that figured out, magic happens. But trust me, we've all made a ton of hiring mistakes. I'm sure Filevine has too, right? We've all made these terrible hiring mistakes, but figuring that out, and by no means do we have it down perfectly. We don't, but it's drastically improved. Once we had that process down and figured out who we actually wanted on the bus, things have gone a lot smoother.
I think you kind of took the words right out of my mouth, Tyson. That was the number one on my top. And I think the important part is also understanding what their duties will be. And once you can clearly identify where your needs are, what duties they'll be doing, you can actually go through and get the right people on that seat. So I 100% agree on the people make a difference.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me too. I think it's in some ways I hear that and I think about what I have to look forward to, because I think both of your businesses are much, much further along than mine. And the thing I have struggled with and is most challenging, I think, to me, or anybody who's still kind of at the very beginning or near the beginning, is really clearly defining what it is you want, what you want your business to do, what you want your goals to be, whether you define it in a traction sense of the term or more loosely. Because I think when I feel like I have my goals, I feel like then I have the kind of answer sheet for the problems and issues that come up and how I want to prioritize. Like if I know I want to file 20 cases with an expected fee of 100 grand in the next 6 months, it becomes very easy to plan once I've made that goal. Or if I know that I want my firm to serve, my life so that I can, take the family somewhere weird for a month and live and work there just to change pace, weird stuff like that. Once you have that checklist of things you want to do, be it in life or in work, I think it makes it so much easier to make the later decisions. Now, it sounds like I've got a huge challenge later on finding more people to help me do those things. But I think for those of us that are still trying to map out what it is we want to accomplish, I think that's the tough one, because it's so hard to kind of first decide what you want, and then as you start to get busier, to take the time to continue to come back to that and make sure you still like those goals and you're still plugging at them.
I appreciate that detail, Tom. That really leads into what I want us to go further on that topic. Knowing what you all know now, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to scale their business?
And Tom, I'll jump in kind of to piggyback off what you said. You won't get it right the first time. You won't get it right the second time. So being patient with yourself, being patient with the, potential employees, the screening process is crucial, or it can be kind of defeating. You get someone in, it doesn't work out. You've spent all this time training them and effort to get them into the company. Give yourself the freedom to make the mistakes and learn from that. One of the things that I definitely have learned as we've scaled teams is really getting to know your team members' strengths and weaknesses at a much deeper level, and understanding that you may have a department that is you're anticipating them all to do the same job. They're all going to serve your complaints or file your complaints, but each individual is going to operate differently. They're going to have a unique skill set that others won't have. So not comparing apples to apples and thinking, Johnny's doing really bad and Susan's a standout. You may just need to realign their duties and find out what they really succeed in and give them special projects and tasks, and making sure that training's consistent, having a nice, clear training path so everybody's doing it the same way. It helps with confusion a lot later with mistakes and things like that, or some things that I've kind of learned the hard way.
I think that's fantastic. Great advice. And with that, regular training too, not just, onboard them and be done with it. Ongoing training, at least on a monthly basis. Get the team trained up and get them together and trained up. But it's funny because Tom, when you're talking, I was thinking I'm going to go in reverse order of my bullet points that I was going to talk about, but it really, a lot of it comes down to vision, like figuring out where you're going, and like read a book like Vivid Vision or 12-Week Year or something like that. There's a billion books on vision. Read one of them, right? And just sit down and actually iron out your vision, write it out. If it's easier for you, put it in a PowerPoint, whatever it is, bullet point it, and then communicate it to your team. I mean, figuring that out, the sooner you figure that out, it's just like in your legal career or any career that you have. Once you figure out what you want to do for a living, like all the other stuff kind of falls into place. Same thing with your firm. If you can figure out the vision, it's great. The other thing is know your numbers, right? From the very, very beginning, figure out what your key numbers are and then focus on those and make sure the team knows what those numbers are. And that way you can make tweaks along the way. Like if you know those numbers, it's way easier for you because like, okay, we're down on leads here. What's the reason for that? Or maybe we've got a bunch of leads, but we don't have any conversions. Okay, there's a problem right there. We can tweak that and we can figure it out and we can get more cases. So knowing those numbers is really, really important. Getting control of your cash flow early on. So read a book like Simple Numbers, Profit First, and get control of that cash flow because as you scale, scaling needs money, right? It consumes a lot of cash. Filevine has seen this. I'm sure Apex Chat's seen this. Tom, I'm sure you've seen this. When you grow and you add more and more people, and that means more user licenses, that means more computers, that means more chairs, that means everything. Like you are consuming cash at a rapid rate. So you need to get control of it. So having those organized into buckets, for tax money, for bonuses, whatever that is, having all that figured out and planned in advance, really, really important. And then the last one I want to talk about is hire. Always be hiring, especially as you're scaling. You can never hire fast enough. I think Ryan McKean also, I mean, we can't do a Filevine seminar without mentioning Ryan McKean because he's such a fanboy, but he's hiring 9 new people right now, right? So you should always be hiring when you're scaling because otherwise you'll be behind the curve and you'll get behind it. So make sure that you are always hiring. So I will shut up and let Tom talk.
No, I need to be more always hiring as I fall behind. No, I think, one of the things, so before I started this firm, I worked at a small firm where the guys who started it had just tons of money. So there was a willingness to grow incredibly quickly. And I think, I was there for 2 years and, I was like employee 3. And when I left, there were like 65 people. And now I think there's probably 100 people and there's a UK law firm too. Like the growth has been ridiculous. And I learned a lot there about, how to keep up with that speed. Because that was really the challenge at that place. And it's a principle I've tried to use in my own firm, which is don't spend too much time trying to figure out how to make it work perfect before you just start doing it. Because you're going to waste all this time trying to map out exactly how it's going to go and how to do it perfectly. You need this. And the more time you spend on that, the more things you're going to convince yourself you need before you just do it. And I think we were much more successful when we just did it. And by doing it, kind of learned what the actual process was, what we actually needed to do. And even though the first time we did it, it was, the kind of more time sensitive people at the firm, the more senior people at the firm doing it that first time, it was so worth it because you did it that first time. You knew the process. You then knew who could do it. You knew how to write out the instructions. You just could move so much faster and iterate. I think there's a great software industry book, I think by Sean Reese. I don't even remember the title, but its core concept is this idea of a minimum viable product. Like just spit out the minimum thing that people can use and then just iterate on it, learn, fix, keep moving. And I think for people who want to scale, especially when you're small, that minimum viable product concept is so key because otherwise you're not going to get started or you're going to waste a lot of time, fixing things that may not need to be fixed.
So Tom, I want to ask you something. Like, haven't you found the lawyers are the opposite way though? They don't want to do that. They don't want to launch.
Oh, for sure. No, I think, I think one of the nice things about the old firm was those guys were like, they were lawyers, but like very little practice and mostly came from like finance and business. So they were like, they hired all of us normal lawyers who were like, well, no, we got to have a process, we got to and they were like, no, just do it. And I think eventually it got beat into some of our heads as kind of the right way to go. And, I think that was, it was a great experience for me kind of seeing like, oh, you break a few things, you get a few things wrong, but at the end of the day, you wind up light years ahead of where you would have been if you tried to kind of stay in the comfort zone.
Personally loving the growing book recommendations list
It'll be a
that's
list
coming from you all. Get that bullet point list of books to check out here soon. Rand, anything you'd want to add to that point?
Yeah, I completely agree. I like to think of myself as the creative out of the box thinker, which is constantly pushing people out of their comfort zones. Um, I think of it as the theory is, I see the island across the ocean and I need the boat to get there, but I don't need the yacht. I'm willing to get on my handmade raft and paddle with my hands and figure it out as I go. I think that's where a lot of the best growth has happened at my previous role as well as here with Apex, is turning something on with an idea, because data, as Tyson mentioned, is really important. And especially when you're trying something new, a lot of times there's no data there to actually gauge how well you're doing, how you can do better. And the only way to get that data is to jump in and try, and understand that it's not going to be perfect, but you can change it as you go. And then, you can train people, you can get other people's input, and it makes for a really fantastic product if you just kind of rip off and jump in with some type of general idea, to just jump in recklessly, but to try things that other people aren't doing will really help with growth as well.
I appreciate that. And it connects back to Tyson, what you said earlier about vision. As you said, Rand, we're not just jumping in completely recklessly. You have a vision guiding that paddling your own way.
Yeah, I think with vision, it's funny because I talked to this attorney one time. It was probably 5 years ago, and he told me, he's like, I'm going all in on criminal defense, and we were at lunch. We were having lunch. He's like, I'm going all in on criminal defense. I'm gonna be the guy in town, right? And then the next day we're having lunch, and he's like, so I think I'm just gonna do injury. I'm just gonna do personal injury. He clearly had no vision for what he wanted to do. Like, he hadn't actually sat down and said, like, hey, here's what I'm going to do with my life. Here's where, like, in 30 years, here's what I see myself doing, right? And you really have to do that. It's hard to do. It's not an easy exercise. It is really not. That's why you have to really sit down and do it. But it's a very extensive exercise. You got to figure out what your core values are for your firm, what your mission is for your firm. You got to figure all that stuff out, map it out. Is it easy? Absolutely not. People like to toss out, oh, figure out your vision, write out your vision. What does that even mean, right? There's a lot to that, right? Okay, how many offices do you want? How many employees do you want? What niche areas do you want to practice in, right? Like what tools do you want to use? Like how many hours a week do you want to work? Like, you got to figure all that stuff out and then map it out. And it's easier said than done. It's really hard to do, but you got to do it. It's part of the process.
And I think it's never over. Yeah.
Never.
You're always going back and being like, God, what was I, even, our business is barely 2 years old. And I look at the goals I wrote when we started it, and I was like, what were you thinking? Like, where did that come from? It's completely unimportant to you now. You just have to keep going back and make it a habit.
I love the what were you thinking moments. You have them all the time, right? What were you thinking? It's part of the process.
Yeah.
Comfort with revision of the vision, it sounds like.
A little bit,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Thanks. I want to remind anyone, I've seen our numbers fluctuating, reminding those of us who have joined post the initial kickoff, want to remind everyone that you are in our Take Your Law Firm from Good to Great webinar with our esteemed panel, Tyson Mutrux, Rayanne Daly, and Tom Kays. As you have questions, I've seen a few drop into the Q&A section here in Zoom. Please send all your questions in via that Q&A tool. We'll have time at the end of our conversation to address those questions. I want to slide into then. Started talking about what tools as you map out your vision and your goals. So what are the top 3 tools in your tech stack?
I'll jump, I guess, ladies first, right, on this one. Data, I'm going to geek out there. Really important to have a functioning data management system that you're putting good data in. It's one thing to have a data management system, but you need to make sure that if you're transferring systems or someone's putting information in for you, that garbage in, garbage out. If you're really going to rely on trusting those numbers, you want to make sure that you have a fantastic data management system. One for me that makes me super excited is one that has a pretty customizable dashboard where I can just quickly jump in and see where everybody is for the whole day, the metrics, see who's falling behind, who needs some help, see where we need to jump in, where we're excelling. The other thing that I can't live without is an electronic signing system for documents, whether it's getting contracts signed or other documents that we need. That's really important. And video conferencing. Video conferencing is super important now for training, more than ever with people working from home, and connection too. So those are my three favorites right now.
Sure. I think, number one, and I'm not getting paid for this, but I definitely Filevine is the most important tool in our firm because we're medium volume, but we deal, in our practice areas, we deal with a lot of leads. There are a lot of, we get a lot of prisoners' rights cases that we can't take because, the law in that area is not super favorable, and to make enough money to sustain a business, you have to be really picky. So we probably turn down literally 99 out of 100 leads. And just keeping track of all that paperwork and making that process function in a way that, that I don't have to do all of it, so that I can have people, I can monitor it, but a lawyer does not have to look at, 1,000 leads, which are, handwritten letters from folks who are in prison and jail. It's critical, and having, being able to kind of design that process and make it work is something that, Filevine can do. And I've used a bunch of other practice management platforms at the last job. We tried a bunch of them, and I just don't think there's one that quite works as well. I think the second most important tool for us is Zapier or Zapier. I still don't know how to pronounce it. I've been using it for half a decade. It's just amazing. And it's what's called an integration platform as a service. It just stitches your various pieces of software together, lets you move data back and forth, lets you automate things. And there are just thousands of 5 and 10 minute tasks in what we do that you can automate if you spend a little time learning this piece of software. Our contract signing is essentially automated. So much of our record keeping is automated. So much of our filling in data, about when things happen is automated. When we have big things we want to do with lots of clients, it's easy to customize an automation. I mean, there's just so much you can do with that piece of software, and a little bit of creativity. So that's definitely number two. I think everything else is kind of a distant third to those two, but we really like Tetra, which is kind of a build your own wiki, like Wikipedia type service. And the reason we like it is we use a lot of part-time help. And the way we find that we work best with those folks is by having very clear expectations for them. And, we hire somebody off of Upwork or something, and we say, hey, look, this is the process. And they read a Tetra article about it. And the Tetra may link to, like a Filevine article or a Filevine video about how to do the thing in Filevine. But it's really, literally, it is step 1, step 2 to step 3 with step 10 with screenshots. Like, this is what we need you to do. And we just need you to do it exactly this way every time. And it has been so effective for the people we've worked with that, we've hired most of our independent contractors, I think within 3 or 4 months of opening the firm, a group of about 6 people. And we've lost one who wanted to go write a screenplay. But other than that, we're still working with the same people, and it's great to have that consistency and to be able to just go into, something changes, go into Tetra, change a couple sentences, email out the link, in Filevine, you can link to the Tetra article. So it's right there. People can refer to it. It's just a really great system. And when you kind of stitch it all together, it makes it pretty easy to run an efficient business.
You and I have so much overlap in what we want to. What I want
because
to say.
I listen to your podcast, man.
I'm
just stealing.
Hey, that's what this is all about. It's all about stealing for sure. So it's funny. I want to take a little bit of approach because I figured there might be some overlap, because I kind of think this is a loaded question. Because Filevine is fantastic, right? Like I love Filevine. I couldn't live without it, right? That's number one, right? That is hands down. Most people watching this probably feel the exact same way. So Filevine is fantastic, but I was going to tell everybody this. Doesn't really matter. I mean, for the most part, other than Filevine, Filevine is different. I'm in a unique position where I've tested out both the inside and the outside in the future of some of these products, right? And I've had people show me, what are our plans for the company, right? Filevine, hands down, it's no question, right? No question. But no matter, it doesn't matter what tools you hear about today, or you can ask 20 lawyers, what are your top three? And you're going to hear 60 different things, right? But here are the things you really need. You need a case management system that's dedicated to what you do, right? So whatever it is, that's a no-brainer. But you need an intake and lead tracking system, right? I know that Filevine uses lead docket. We don't, but there are 100 of them out there. You just need one of them, right? You need you need some sort of lead docket kind of a product, right? Intake and lead tracking. That's huge, right? You need a brain for your firm. You need a Tetra, right? You need somewhere to hold all of your processes and your systems, right? You need that so that when you onboard people, you can actually, hey, I know you've asked me this question twice. I want you to go read this Tetra article, right? I want you to figure this out, right? I want you to learn about it, right? That's really, really important. You can put all your team trainings there. Those things are really, really important. You need something like Zapier. That was one of mine. By the way, I've been corrected so many times, Tom, on that. I want to say Zapier so badly. It's Zapier, apparently. So people give me crap all the time. I fall back into it. It's Zapier. But you need something to automate those. And there's kind of a question in here, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit about data. You don't want your people typing in data twice or 3 times or 4 times. So if you enter it into your lead system, you don't want them to also retype it after you've signed the case over into Filevine. You need something like Zapier to prevent that duplicative data, because if you want to turn your people off of a product, make them enter it in twice. They'll hate it. So make sure you have those things. And then I'll also add that you've got to add something to track your numbers. I like Domo. I don't know what you're calling it these days, if it's Periscope or if it's Domo. I like Domo. It's Domo. I like it. We track all of our key numbers in there. It's really, really important. But I'll add in 2 other things. My top 3 were actually Filevine, Ring Central, and Google Workspace, because I was really thinking about, like, what are the things, if we just got rid of everything else that we could actually do and run our firm, I could do it all in Filevine, Ring Central, and Google Workspace. I really could. I wouldn't need another product. We have a lot more in our tech stack, but those are the things we absolutely need, no matter what.
As I've heard, Zapier makes you happier is how I learned to correct myself.
I like it.
It's awesome.
Well,
I
and
wanna
I think
come
what
back-
both of you guys, I think what both of you guys are saying with the systems that you're using for training, whether you're bringing on contractors or things like that, is really helpful with the consistency. And I think that's a really key piece for scaling. Maybe you turn on your marketing and you get a whole bunch of cases all of a sudden. You have the process there in place that anybody can jump in at any time and at least jump in and get their feet going. That's key to be able to scale, is getting personnel up and running quickly with their clear visions and your visions too. So.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really nice especially as you scale. Just like, you've already done it, right? It's already in the system, right? So you can just, here you go, right? Like, it's kind of interesting. Like, onboarding is just like, there you go. It needs to be a mix of like doing things in person and with them, but like being able to just hand them a training module is such a lifesaver. It is so nice.
And
I think it please, Rand.
I think it cuts down on all the some of the reflective listening issues too. The way I'm explaining it to you, the way it works in my head is certainly not the way that someone's understanding it. So, if you give 5 people the same instructions, 5 people are going to do it a different way. They're also wasting time with keystrokes and taking notes and things like that. It's right there. They can, if they learn by videos, they can watch the video, they can read the instructions, they can do it. It pleases everybody in the way that they learn.
Totally. And I think it gives you a kind of interviewing and hiring tool too, because you can, we have our kind of live Filevine org, our live database, and we have, a really crappy copy of it in a separate org. And when we're hiring somebody new, we can give them the exact process, and we can give them this kind of safe, can't bust anything, no real data environment. And, you pay them, and, instead of doing a kind of interview and resume look, it's like, this is what I want you to do, go do it. And, you see, do they follow instructions? Do they not? Can they do it? And it's been successful for us in kind of not just hiring and not hiring, but also like figuring out that, this person we hired for this can actually do these 17 other things because they just meticulously follow directions. Yeah, go Tetra and Tetra like things.
They need to be paying us, right? We
Yeah.
need to get credits from Tetra for this, but we don't. It's our fault though.
Send them the recording.
You guys kind of jumped in. I was going to deeper and ask you all to, choose one. Tyson, you've shared that you've whittled down to your must-have 3 to keep going. And Tom, you've just mentioned Tetra seems to be your top of those 3 you listed. At this moment, you couldn't live without that ease of sharing your processes with current and new staff.
Yeah, I think we couldn't do things nearly as efficiently as we do them without Filevine, because there's nothing like being able to have templates and have phases and have automatic tasks. And, when you really build out the system and know what you're doing, it just gives you so much leverage over your time. I've worked at too many other law firms, and some of them have been very successful, some of them less so. But a lot of them, even the successful ones, are wildly inefficient because they're constantly reinventing the wheel. The senior partner who has won, 19 of his last 20 jury trials and has to remake a caption every time he wants to file a motion for an extension, which should be like a 2-button, somebody making some, hourly rate kind of thing. And, to just kind of pump all that through Filevine, I can't imagine having a successful business without that tool right now, or at least starting a successful business. I think, at least on the plaintiff's contingency side, the margins are so ridiculous that they forgive once you get ahead of steam, they forgive a lot of frankly bad business practices. Things like a restaurant or a grocery store could never get away with because their margins are so much thinner. But to kind of get off the ground when I don't have, a ton of seed capital, and I don't have, my cases take forever, and I've only been at this 2 years. So most of them, right now we're just in the pouring money out phase, really. And things will probably start to come back in the next, 8 to 12 months. But I don't think we could get away with that without Filevine, because we'd be doing half the number of cases, and it just wouldn't make economic sense.
Tom, Rand, do you have which one you could not live without of your list? You mentioned data management systems, e-signing, and video conferencing.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm a little video conferenced out. I do think it's helpful, but I've got to go with the data management system. I think I just can't live without it. The amount of things that are coming through that need to be actually looked at. I don't need to understand what every single employee is doing day in and day out, but I do need to understand that from a data perspective of the overall tasks that are getting done, where we stand with KPIs, key things like that. Data management to me also can be more than just the data and reporting side of things. It can be the case management system like Filevine or things like that, where you're able to automate things. For me not to have to pull multiple Excel spreadsheets, run the formulas myself. On any given day, I could need to look at 30 different sheets just to see where I am. If you can put that into a management system, it's all right in front of you. You click, it updates, it quickly takes you to the case. The other things as well too in the data management are the intake systems and things like that are automating. Tom, I know that you said that you're turning away 99 out of 100, although they're written paper cases, but other cases that are coming through as web leads, such as capture and things like that. You have automation where they can automatically follow up. It can chase leads. The amount of time that it takes, personal time to dial the phone, to send a text message, all of that can be eliminated or accelerated with these automatic flows, saving hours and hours of time to chase the people that you do want to get in front of, but allows you to really spend the time on the phone that are going to take the time and talk that can turn into viable leads for you. So I've got to go hands down those types of systems.
Great. No, thank you all. Well, let's talk then digital workspace. We've talked about a lot of these platforms, but what does that term mean to you? And how has it enhanced your workflow?
I'll go first if you want me to.
Sure.
It's funny. I kind of struggle with this question, but I mean, I viewed digital workspace as basically all based on my tech stack. It's kind of the way I view it. As it's that's why I kind of struggle with it a little bit. But it's really where all of your apps, all of your softwares, all your systems really sit and that you use them. And we've worked really, really hard. I mean, we've got 3 systems people now that work for our firm, and that's all they do is work on our systems, right? And so we've constantly worked on connecting those things and making sure that they all connect. So when you're talking about, digital workspace, and it's always something you're tweaking and making better and improving, but we've worked really, really hard at connecting those things, because if they don't connect, what's the point of having it, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So we worked really hard in connecting those things. It's a constant struggle. We're always doing it, but I don't know. That's the way I view a digital workspace.
I would agree. And I'm kind of trying to take myself back to one of my first jobs that was the opposite of anything digital or tech savvy whatsoever. We had no intake system. We had no calendaring system. The fax machine was independent from the copy machine, was independent from everything. And just thinking about how much time it took to accomplish one task, taking all of those, I guess, old school systems and putting them into everything that's in my computer now, where I can answer the phone from my computer, I can fax from my computer, I can scan. I can, instead of going to the cabinet and pulling out the hard file, I go right onto my Google Drive and pull it out. Being able to take all of those things and mix them together and then share it with everybody. So everybody's learning, everybody's contributing is kind of what I think of when I think of a digital workspace.
Yeah, I think for us, I guess, I wasn't familiar with, I think like Tyson, I was like, not sure what this question is asking me. But if I had to guess, I think it's, where physically on the screen where you're doing most of your work. And, I to everyone who works at the firm, I want them doing it all. I want them doing it all in Filevine so we can all see it, because I know, when I worked at a big defense firm, and there was this critical problem where they didn't really have, well, they had a document management system that was so terrible that no one liked using it. So maybe for like a critical brief, people would like version a single document in the doc management system and everybody could see it, maybe. But for the most part, people just, your document management system was like some guy's email and your desktop and like the laptop that maybe somebody leaves in a, cab someday. And it just blew my mind how horrible that was, because we all spent 20 minutes a day asking people, who's got the latest copy of this, who's got this, who's got that, who's got the latest version of that. And it was, and this was like charging people thousands of dollars an hour, kind of law firm that was that ridiculous. So since then, I've always been kind of religious about put it all in one place, have it all in one place, have it where everybody can see it. I never want people stuffing things in their email, saving stuff on their desktop if they can stuff it in Filevine, where we've all got it, where there's one source of truth. I mean, I think when at the last firm where we grew very quickly, it was a very high volume practice. We were always using the phrase one source of truth, because at the end of the day, if you wanted to know something about one of your cases or about all of them, you needed one place to look. Otherwise, it became quickly very unmanageable. And, most of my work, my latter chunk of work at that firm was in attempting to stitch together a bunch of systems and connect them up to, I think it was Salesforce at the time, to create one source of truth. And, I just think whatever is your one source of truth for your team, I think that's probably your digital workspace. But I think having that can be so important, because you never know what you're gonna, all the little inefficiencies or mistakes you're gonna have if your truth is split among many not internet connected, not backed up, disk drives and laptops and thumb drives and email accounts and all this other nonsense.
I'm stealing
raising
that.
my blood pressure as I think about it.
I love it. But I'm stealing that one source of truth. I love it. I think that's a
I'm
nice
happy
unifying phrase.
to give something back here, but
Love it.
I got that. So yeah, the one source of truth. The key you all share there is the digital workspace. It has to be connected, shared, and accessible for not just you to work independently, but to work with your teams. And I keep thinking back to Ryan, you're mentioning of having to go through 30 different spreadsheets to know what's going on. That's where your connection and having it shared really helps you out there. But leaning into them, the teams. We've talked about how you share new knowledge with your teams, but focusing on then building efficient teams. Since similar to digital workplace, I've got another subjective term, workplace culture. How would you describe the culture at each of your companies?
Oh, Tom, you went on mute. You don't want to go first.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't want to start.
It's a cranky baby outside.
Oh man,
I think she's less cranky now. No, I'll go first for once. Our culture is pretty loose. I mean, we have a relatively small team. It started with just me as a lawyer in February of 2020. So we didn't know it, or I didn't know it when I started the place, but we very quickly became a pandemic law firm. You know, we've never had a physical office, and our staff. You know, I'm in the Chicago suburbs. My new partner, who's been with us for about a year, she's in downtown Chicago. We have a two contract paralegals in Mexico. We have kind of all-purpose, kind of does everything great person in Albania. We have another team member who does a little bit of work in California, another one in India. And so it's very distributed. And as I think is increasingly common with some plaintiffs firms, a lot of the team, they're not W-2 employees. They don't owe us 40 hours a week. They have other things that they do, other priorities, and they kind of like it that way. So I think, our culture is, to the extent we can say we have it, it's really focused on the kind of work. And I like people who care about our clients and care about what they're doing. But, I always have to kind of balance that against respecting that other than one other person, this is part-time for other people, and they have other things they're doing. But to kind of, like I said, we haven't had any turnover in that group, which I'm very proud of. And I think that comes from the fact that, I always, even if this person's given me 5 hours a week, they know how important they are. They know how their work fits into the puzzle. They know we appreciate them, both monetarily and just with me saying it and emailing about it and telling them when clients say nice things about them. They know they feel comfortable because they have processes. I think, I don't know, that's a random answer, but I think, not in the sense that we don't, because we're not all together ever. That may be all we can do on the culture front, at least for now.
I would have to say we have a similar culture. We have lots of employees all over the world. They all work on specific teams, work different time zones, all of those types of things, have different areas of specialties. One thing that I can say that's consistent with our culture is everyone's very thoughtful and pretty intentional in their thought process. They're thoughtful of each other. They're considerate of each other's feelings and ideas. We put a lot of thought in many different forms through thought on improving a new process, thought on new services we may be rolling out, and we really listen to each other's opinions at every level, no matter where they're from, to hear their pain points, to make everybody be able to work better and more efficiently. We do have a mixed bag of people from all over the place, and that's really, the best thing that we've found right now is just being thoughtful of each other and always opening and listening to each other's ideas.
I would say, and for us, I think supportive is the word I would use. Supportive, I think we're very supportive. We spend a lot of time kind of working on that and making sure our core values are kind of surrounded about supporting each other and encouraging each other. And a lot of what we do when we do our daily huddles, it's very encouraging of each other. We've done a lot of work in spending like time on figuring out what kind of employees we actually want. Some of this is from Jack Welch, like what Jack Welch was looking for in an employee. And so I've looked at a lot of different things. And so we've got a name for our people. We call them peeps, right? So it's P, and it's 4 E's and then another P and then S. So the P and the S at the end are lowercase. So it's that they are passionate, they have energy, they energize others, they have edge, and they execute. So we've defined those people. Whenever we're hiring people, we're looking for people that are like that. And the energy is the most important thing. So a lot of our interview questions are about energy and energizing other people, because I think we've all been in a room where you've been with a person, they're just kind of and it just kind of brings your energy down. But you've also been in that room with people, with a person where like, oh my gosh, that I feel so great after talking to that person. Like we want those people, right? So whenever they're on the phone with clients, they feel great after the phone call, not, so we focus a lot on that. That's a really, really important part of it. So having that support and defining the kind of person that you want working for your firm, and, having peeps may not work for you. Maybe you don't want that for your type. That's fine. That's what our firm was once, right? Maybe it may not be what your firm wants. So don't just listen to this stuff and say, oh, I'm going to do that. Actually think about it, right? Actually think about the kind of people that you want, because maybe that kind of a person doesn't work for every practice area. So just remember that. And I'm going to try not to jump on the other questions. So I'm going to shut up for a second, Natalie, until you get to the other questions.
Well, you're welcome to jump in, Tyson, because I was going to transition us to our questions. I'm seeing the numbers crank up. So if you're dying to answer one of my other questions, is it about how you ensure employees are tapped into culture, or wanting to address the challenges and how you overcame them?
I would say I want to talk about the challenges because
Great.
because it's funny because you'll hire. I mean, your firm changes, right? It's your companies change, your firms change, and whenever you hire a person, they might be a great fit for your firm at that time. They might be, but as things change a little bit, they may no longer be the right person, right? So you have to kind of constantly assess that. But the hardest part, I think, is really aligning your employees with your vision for the firm, and actually making sure that they're on board with that. That is really, really challenging. That, to me, that is the hardest part, right? Because like I said, they might be with you at the beginning. They might have read your core values. They may have heard you talk about the vision in the interview process. They may have asked all the questions or answered the questions the right way, but keeping them aligned with that vision is really, really hard. So some of the things that we do is, and we've been doing it fairly recently by that meaning over the last few months, but we talk about our core values a lot. We revisit our core values a lot, but we'll go through, and there's a little wheel, and I got this idea from somebody, I don't remember, but there's a little wheel. Let me tell you this tool really quick. So while I'm talking, so we'll do this wheel, and we'll pick a core value, and that is called Wheel of Names. So if you go to wheelofnames.com, I think, so you just plug it in. We say, hey, we'll pick a core value. So we'll spin the wheel, and we'll say, okay, this is the core value. Who has exhibited this core value this week, right? We'll do something like that. And then whoever that person is, they can then spin a little wheel for a gift, right? It's kind of a little fun little thing. So people are exhibiting those core values. It's a really cool thing. Visiting those during the quarterly meetings, go back and revisit those core values, making sure that everyone that you're still on the same page, everyone's still following those core values. And then if you do traction or if you do scaling up, there's a lot of different programs. They kind of force you to do that as well, right? They force you to revisit, is Natalie, is she living the core values? Yes or no? If not, we need to maybe have a conversation with Natalie and talk about that, right? Is Tom, yeah, Tom is absolutely exhibiting the core values. Maybe we should give Tom a raise, right? So having those and incorporating those into your employee evaluations, into your regular meetings, really, really important.
Exciting. We use something similar it's kind of a peer-to-peer recognition system. It's not the wheel, but what it does is you're able to load your core values into it, and those are your hashtags, and the peers can jump on. And when somebody does something really great, they can give points to them. Those points accumulate and turn into gift cards or swag or different things like that, trips, which is really nice because it publicly celebrates everybody's wins and accomplishments. And it's really nice to go through and say, hey, Natalie, you're doing a great job hosting this webinar. Here's 15 points. And it's a really positive, encouraging thing. The other thing that have found is really helpful too is also making sure that, you're recognizing them personally in personal meetings as well too, making people feel validated, appreciated, having those one-on-one tough conversations. If somebody's doing something, they're just falling behind, don't just get frustrated and let them go. Check in with them, see what the issues may be, stay engaged with them so you can encourage their development, help them along. It may be that they don't know what they're doing. It may be that they're incredibly distracted or they're starting to feel burnout as well too. Sometimes you need to, in my job rotation, if someone's in one department for 5 or 6 years and they're doing the same thing over and over again, they're really good at it, but they're caught in they're caught in that groove. It might be time to switch them to a different department and apply their knowledge of the company to a different area and let them shine. Look at it from fresh eyes. Team building activities, all types of things like that are really great ways to keep employees engaged. And I think any opportunity that you can give them to put their input and make a difference, putting them the lead on different projects, letting them kind of run with it and build their own team so this is theirs and they can actually see the fruits of their labors, have been really successful tactics for me in keeping people engaged.
No, I don't have much to add because I think my teams are pretty. My team is pretty small compared to what Rayanne and Tyson are dealing with. I would just add, I think, people need to feel important. And when they don't, that can have a corrosive effect on everything you're trying to do. And I think one of the things we try to do here with our team is, and people are very siloed. Like there are people, they do their thing and then the rest of the case is somebody else. But we still try to keep everybody as informed as possible. Everybody hates getting extra email, but when something big happens in a case that somebody worked on, even if their piece was done 6 months ago, they get an update. Something good happens into the firm, everybody finds out so they can just kind of feel like they're part of the team, feel like they're being informed, feel like, realize that the powers that be think they're, believe that they're very important and worthy of informing. And I think those little things are very, very cheap, very easy to do, but also very powerful and yet kind of also easy to forget. And especially, I don't know if folks in the audience or, Tyson, or if anybody has experience working in kind of older, more traditional firms, but, there's a lot of kind of bad practice there about like, well, now we're talking about settlements. So, the associate who spent, 3 years with this client working this case up, we're just going to strip them off all the emails and it'll just be me and the adjuster or me and defense counsel on the phone because it's my name on the door. And, that kind of thing happened to me as a younger lawyer. And it doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you feel like part of the team. And I think conversely, the best memories I have of working for people are the people who went out of their way to kind of make you feel included and value your input. And, no matter the culture you're trying to, specific cultural goals you're trying to accomplish, I think that's just so important just to keeping people engaged, especially now that we're all heads in boxes on Zoom most of the time.
Tom, so it's funny. I got to say something about that because I 100% agree with you. Back a long time ago, I worked for a firm, and the attorney, when I was bringing in cases, the attorney would see my name on the letterhead because what we would do is one of those old school firms. You would take the letterhead, you put it on the counter, and then someone would put it in an envelope and send it out. And they would see that my name was on there, and then they would go and say, take this to the paralegal and say, hey, I want you to reprint this with my name on it and send it out instead, which it's insane, right? It's absolutely insane. And if you want to destroy the culture in your firm, do that. Go ahead and do it. It's terrible, but you want to encourage your employees to have ownership, right? Encourage them to make mistakes, encourage them to do things give them some ownership in it, and they'll enjoy it more. They'll like their job more. They'll feel more appreciated. So what you said, 100% on point.
Oh yeah. I mean, just look at everything Big Law does and realize that those are all bad things. And that's why you have an industry that needs to pay people $250,000 their first year out of law school, just so maybe they won't quit right away. Like it's like hostage money, and understand that why it's so high. Not, it's not, they're not paying for results, for all these first year folks. It's like we're basically blood money to our poor culture and practices and how terrible they make people feel. And, everybody who wants to run a business should kind of run the other way.
Tom's making friends today.
Yeah, they know how I feel.
Appreciate that focus on having the value felt in order to engage with the culture and having that ownership. Looking at keeping an eye on our timing today, since we have you all here with us for the hour. We do receive all the questions put in the Q&A, and we'll be including responses and answers to those questions we don't have time to address live later this week in our follow-up email. But I want to see if we have a chance to answer at least one or two of these while the three of you are on the line. The first one I want to bring up, I think, would be a far broader conversation, but we'll give it a go. What would you suggest we do to help employees who aren't growth minded adapt and get on board with new systems?
That one, I think I've approached it a couple different ways. That's a constant battle, probably because I'm always pushing the envelope so much of new systems and things like that. Listening to them, and it's okay to be afraid. Change is intimidating, but with change comes growth. Going through and finding out what their resistance is. Is it because they don't know how to use the computer? They don't know how to operate it. A lot of times, once you lead by example and show them and give them the proper training with some results, that resistance breaks down. There are some people that it doesn't come for them, and they have to either make the decision to rise to the occasion, or maybe that this isn't for them as well too. But listening to them and getting ahead of it and giving them training towards the things you're trying to do, understanding your process and explaining your vision and the why you're asking them to make this change, typically will help people come around.
What I would add to that is, the reality is you might have the wrong person on the bus. It just might be the reality of it is, because one of the questions we ask is, I got to remember what the exact question is, but it's what do you feel about change? Like, what are your thoughts on change, right? We want to see like what they think about it, because you should always be changing, right? You'd like to be able to say, I'm going to set it and forget it. It doesn't work that way. So I'll start with that premise that maybe you got the wrong person, but I also do. I mean, when things change, I always also kind of break it down to them. And here's what I say. I say, listen, I've got to create systems even for myself, because if I get hit by a train tomorrow, guess what happens? The firm would go away if these were not in systems, and if we didn't have a system, if we didn't follow the systems. So everything's got to be in there. So if, for example, if you were unfortunately to die tomorrow, the same thing, right? We've got to make sure. So I always usually start with myself, giving that example, because if I were to die tomorrow, and if we didn't have everything mapped out, we'd be in a lot of trouble. There would be people that we wouldn't be able to make payroll. We wouldn't be able to, people wouldn't be able to keep their jobs. They wouldn't be able to send their kids to school, for private school. They wouldn't be able to do all these different things. And so sometimes you have to relate to them from a personal level. Like, these are why we do these. It's not necessarily about growth. It's not always about growth, but it's about making sure that the firm can continue on.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything really to add to that one. I think you have to address it head on, or if the person is not, if the person doesn't jive with the way you want your firm to do things, then I think you've got to confront that head on rather than letting it fester.
And I think from a hiring perspective, you can catch it up front. With current employees, it's a little different, but you can catch those things right up front and not bring people that aren't as growth minded not through your doors.
Thank you all for those answers. And again, we have more questions, but I'm keeping an eye on the time there. I appreciate our wonderful panel. Thank you Tyson, Tom, and Rayanne for your time, your advice, and for keeping our conversation going. And thank you to everyone who has attended. Again, we have the questions. We receive them at the end of this recording. So we'll be sharing out a few of those answers and, most importantly, this conversation recording with all of you via email later this week. Thank you all again for the time, and thank you, Tom, Tyson, and Rayanne, for the wonderful chat and conversation.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having me.
Natalie.
Thanks, everybody. Lots of fun.